Serious question. How often are you online? It's hard to imagine life without high-speed internet, smartphones, and instant access to almost anything. Over 20 years have passed since the web became a staple in our daily lives, and the pandemic escalated our virtual presence dramatically. From social media and schooling to YouTube channels and bingeable Netflix shows, the internet is full of digital content ripe for picking by anyone from just about anywhere. For Canadians, online liberty was a given. We boast a reputation of freedom. It's even in our national anthem. But new legislation making its way through Parliament has many questioning how Bill C-11 will impact what they see and share online, and asking why the government wants to force the new age medium back into the past. Keep watching to hear what internet experts, creators, and consumers like you are saying about Bill C-11. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy the video. Canadians have a lot to say about the Online Streaming Act, otherwise known as Bill C-11.
The government had to parse up the airwaves because the airwaves were actually a scarce resource. Now, and the internet is not a scarce resource. We also have now the government clamping down more viciously than in any other developed country on the freedom for Canadians to get access to all of the information on the internet, not just that produced by Canadians.
I think that the content consumer wants to have control over their own content viewing experience. I don't think there's a huge demand for government, for Ottawa, for the CRTC to, stick its hand into this process and say, aha, Mo, we think you should be watching this.
Negative feedback that we collect can actually have a ripple through the system because it basically teaches the system that this content from Canadian creators isn't as engaging and satisfying.
C-11 is certainly needed. We need to modernize the Broadcasting Act. I also feel it's well-intentioned legislation on behalf of the governing party, and it has good items in it.
The government has said that the intent is to target the large streamers like the Netflixes and Amazon Primes of the world.
Aimed at putting Canadian content in the online spotlight, the bill was introduced in February 2022. And its journey through Parliament has sparked hot debate on the platform it intends to regulate.
What's the big rush?
Canada's Online Streaming Act, Bill C-11, could affect your ability to reach your audience and earning potential as a YouTube creator.
With C-11, well, the goal is simple. It's to promote, to protect our culture in the digital age. And that's it. That's it. We want to make sure that Canadian talent can succeed here and abroad. Whether it's our actors, singers, independent producers, we want them to continue doing what they do best, and we will support them. Now, I've heard concerns, and we all heard concerns about social media and social media creators. And to be clear, I love what they do. They're amazing. But this bill is not about them. Social media creators can continue to create and succeed just as they're doing right now. And as I've said multiple times, when it's come to this bill, the platforms they're in, users are out. This bill is simply about platforms playing their fair share towards our culture.
Much of the controversy is focused on whether the bill will allow the CRTC to regulate user-generated content, and how manipulating discoverability algorithms could bury CanCon before it reaches international audiences.
Section 4.2.2, where we get an exemption to an exemption, one that appears to scope in larger producers and posters who are monetizing their content. The government and the CRTC insist that language is only meant to capture the really big producers. Unfortunately, that's not what the bill actually says. It talks instead about people who are monetizing their content directly or even indirectly. And that lack of clarity has led to justifiable confusion and concern that successful independent Canadian digital producers could indeed be scoped in and captured and treated like Sony and Disney. It would be one thing if we were simply asking Netflix and Spotify and the like to create a search bar for Canadian content or to curate CanCon for our various tastes. Such static discoverability would not be a big concern. Far more concerned that what the government says it wants, more discoverability of Canadian content, it really means that it wants services such as YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Apple to tweak their algorithms to privilege Canadian programs and posts. And that's where things get dicey. The government won't directly manipulate algorithms, but if the CRTC directs or compels companies such as YouTube to manipulate their algorithms to achieve the government's desired outcome, well, that starts to become a distinction without a difference, doesn't it?
And some Canadians are concerned this algorithm manipulation is a roundabout method of federal government censorship.
Essentially, what's happening at the federal government level right now is a continuation of the overreach that occurred during the COVID-19 era, and now we have new legislation whereby essentially the federal government wants to control everything that we're seeing and everything that we have access to, and also what we can say to each other. You can see some of the legislation now that the federal government is bringing in where they actually want to control what we can post online. And for example, platforms like my own podcast, according to the federal government's current dictates, would be considered offensive to the government.
Content creators like Rob Boutlier, known as the Patriotic Dad, to his large TikTok and Facebook followings, are already planning their next steps if Bill C-11 is given Royal Assent.
I have no doubt that these moves are going to severely cripple my ability to get a message out there. Now, I guess on a positive, through VPNs, things like that, there may be ways we can overcome this. It might mean teaming up with organizations that are in the United States and distributing content through them in a way that the government does not have influence over. I'm hopeful that there's a strategy we can deploy there to continue growing our following and building our message. Bill C-11, I have no doubt that that is going to be expanded to have the most insane level of influence over what we see online. And this is like, it's framed in a really nice, pretty way. But you know, when there's riots happening in Iran and China and the internet just shuts off and they're trying to have conversations through WhatsApp and all that stuff, like that's the type of control that the government's pursuing here.
Former journalist and current independent Senator Paula Simon echoes similar sentiments about the lasting effects of C-11 and the Liberal Party tone that can be heard in the bill.
This kind of legislation has to withstand the partisan views of the day. Governments change. So this government may be happy making decisions about what I see and what I watch and whether I'm allowed to be critical of government. But when the shoe's on the other foot and there's another government in Ottawa, then what are they going to think?
Spencer Strykert is a comedian and content creator in Calgary. He hosts a podcast and co-founded the Quarantine International Film Festival. Strykert is one of many digital creators asking whether those making the rules understand the nuances of potential long-term impacts the bill could have when it comes to Canadians using the web.
People that are being affected are not the ones that are making the choices right now. That's one of the biggest problems that we have, is that there is a big disconnect generationally. And I think that there needs to be more consulting of people our age on these issues. Early millennials and Gen Z, we're figuring it out. We're the ones that have grown up with the internet. We're the ones that have, we've been turning the internet into our businesses. And we have people making laws right now who grew up in a time without the internet and honestly are still struggling to use it.